Welcome to rndtaxcredits.ie. My name is Cathal Noon and I'm about to give you a quick introductory video on R&D tax credits. I'll explain the benefits of the credit, the costs allowed in an R&D tax credit claim, the technical requirements you'll need to meet, and then try to explain why this is such a challenging area of tax for companies. So let's start with the basics. What are the benefits of an R&D tax credit claim? Essentially, the credit is a 25% refund on qualifying R&D expenditure. This refund comes in addition to your standard corporation tax deductions. The credit is claimed against corporation tax in the current year, firstly, followed by any prior year corporation tax liabilities, and any excess amount left over after those two deductions is monetised over a 3-year period. Another benefit from an accounting perspective is that the credit can be taken above the line when calculating profits before tax. Essentially, it's treated akin to a grant on the expenditure incurred. So what are the qualifying costs? Well, first and foremost, there's payroll costs. You don't have an R&D tax credit claim unless you have employees carrying on R&D activities within your company. For the purposes of the claim, you can include the full emoluments of the employees, including employers' PRSI and employers' pension contributions, and this is apportioned on the basis of the qualifying time spent on R&D activities. The next costs to consider are direct costs, or costs incurred directly in the carrying on of the R&D activities. Typical costs include materials costs, software costs, cloud computing costs, things like that. The next cost, which can also make up a large proportion of the claim, tends to be capital costs. Ireland is fairly unique in the fact that it allows capital costs to be claimed in an R&D tax credit. These are apportioned based on the use of the asset for qualifying R&D activity over the useful life of that asset. All of the assets must qualify for capital allowances. Contractor costs are the next element. Quite often companies outsource a portion of their R&D activities to third parties, and these costs can be included in the claim subject to caps of 15% of the internal spend or €100,000, whichever is the greater. Similarly, university costs can be included in the claim and are subject to the same caps as contractor costs. It's important to note that both costs have their own caps applied. Overheads are the next costs we tend to see in R&D tax credit claims. However, it should be noted that they're very limited in scope. Generally speaking, the only cost revenue allowed at this point are utility costs. The last costs to mention briefly are industrial building costs that can qualify under certain circumstances. It's important to note that the building itself must qualify for industrial buildings allowances in order to claim. Unfortunately, the financial side of an R&D tax credit claim is the easy part. The difficulties really come when you start looking at what qualifies from a technical point of view, and do your R&D projects meet the technical definition required to be considered a qualifying R&D project for the purposes of the legislation. In order to assess this, there's essentially 5 key tests that have to be satisfied in order to qualify. The first test is that the activity is systematic, investigative, or experimental activity. Those activities must be in a qualifying field of science or technology. The activities must be basic research, applied research, or experimental development activities. They must seek to achieve a scientific or technological advancement, and they must seek to resolve scientific or technological uncertainties. So what does this mean? Well, we'll run through each one quickly. The first one, that a systematic investigative or experimental activity, really outlines the fact that it needs to be done in a planned logical sequence according to some type of internal structure or methodology, and it needs to be recorded and documented. The fields of science and technology are defined and are pretty much all the STEM subjects. Behavioural sciences, however, are not a qualifying field. If we look at the next one, basic research, applied research, or experimental activity, 95% of the activities we see claimed in R&D tax credit are experimental activities, rather than basic research, which is more your blue sky thinking, university type research, or applied research, which is really trying to apply those type of white papers to real life scenarios. The last two are the difficult elements to meet. So, are you trying to achieve a scientific or technological advancement? So, revenue would say that it's not just a scientific or technological advancement in the company's internal state of knowledge or technology. It has to be on an international scale. And essentially, an academic needs to recognize the fact that achieving the advancement sought by the project would represent an advance in the field. Similarly, on the technological uncertainty piece, a competent professional in the field would have to acknowledge and appreciate the challenges faced in trying to deliver the overall project, and that there has to be uncertainties overcome in order to deliver on those technical pieces. So that all seems pretty simple so far. So why is it such a challenging area of tax, and why do many companies, accounting firms and finance teams want to avoid it if at all possible? There are two key reasons. The first of which is that the technical element of the claim is entirely subjective. No person can tell you that you're meeting the advancement and uncertainty criteria with any degree of certainty. When an audit occurs, Revenue appoint an academic to assess the advancement and uncertainty criteria, and each of those academics would have a very different interpretation of what is considered an advancement and what would be considered a technological uncertainty. The best a company can hope for is that they are presenting the best case and the best evidence to that academic to help support those uncertainties and advancement criteria. This is well outside the comfort zone of your finance teams or external tax advisors. My job is to help your technical teams put their best foot forward to ensure a good result in an audit and improve the probability of a successful outcome by presenting the best facts possible. The technical documentation that has been prepared is the first piece of information that the academic will see, and quite often before they step foot inside the building, they have made their own assessment on whether or not they believe these projects are qualifying R&D activities. Our job is to ensure that these documents mean that 9 out of 10 of those academics will walk through the door relatively comfortable before they even speak to your engineering teams. The second piece that causes great difficulty is actually the way the legislation is worded around costs allowed in an R&D tax credit. The legislation uses the words costs incurred in the carrying on by it of research and development activities, and this wording in the carrying on by it do not appear anywhere else in tax legislation, and therefore there is no supporting case law, as there would be if the word said wholly and exclusively or for the purposes of. Because of this, costs that would have been allowed historically in a claim have been reinterpreted or reassessed by Revenue and are now deemed non-qualifying. So there's always a changing goalposts in terms of the qualifying costs. Again, you need experts in this area of taxation to make sure they're up to date with the current Revenue interpretation of what that phrase means. That's it for our introductory video to R&D tax credits. If you have any questions or would like to ask me anything additional, you can contact me with the information as seen on screen. And if you want to know more about me or the company, you'll see it on the website, rndtaxcredits.ie. I'm happy to have an initial conversation with anyone on R&D tax credits, whether or not they should claim, how their claiming is happening at the moment, or even set them up with a free demonstration of our new web app that's going to make claiming R&D tax credits easier and cheaper for you going forward. Look forward to talking to you soon.